and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. Here to break down the DFS slate with qualifying in the books, as well as updating the betting board, looking for new opportunities, and finding different bets to attack for the night race on Saturday at Martinsville. And here with me to do it is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's going on, Kyle? Yeah, we got to hit on this real quick, but the end of that Xfinity race tonight was absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
And will be the talk of the sports world going into the morning, which is saying something for basically the minor leagues of NASCAR.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's funny because, you know, when you're the person moving somebody else's car, you don't seem to be as upset about it. But when they're doing it to you and 100K is on the line,
Yep.
Then all of a sudden you're throwing a fit and being really upset. And then he's losing his mind in the end of the race. And then he gets out of his car. And of course he runs over to start a fight. He being Gibbs and then obviously with Sam something.
I think it's Sam Mayer.
Mayer, yeah, blanking. And Mayer's got his helmet off, and he's like, "Take your helmet off, take your helmet off," and he doesn't do it. He just starts pumping him in the face, and it's like when in the NFL when the players run up to each other, one guy takes his helmet off, the other guy leaves his helmet on, and he starts punching his helmet. I'm like, what is that going to do? Like, that's literally a protective device. It's not going to do anything. But
yeah,
it was funny listening to Allmendinger and be like, I don't know what that was. People need to calm down.
Well, what's funny about that is even my wife commented because we were watching the last few laps, and mind you, my wife absolutely hates fighting, but even she was like yelling at the guy, like, take your helmet off, take your helmet off. But yeah, she commented how AJ Allmendinger just sounds so much more mature than the other dudes that
he's probably like 40 something. The other guys are like 20s.
He's old enough to be all those guys' dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
so
their dad, yeah.
Fun race though. Truck race is pretty good. The Xfinity
Willie
race
B,
is pretty good. Huh?
Willie B.
Yeah. And now we're going into the night race. Obviously, it's really nice. It's a really good schedule. We got F1 in Australia, so I'm going to be able to watch the F1 race at 10 o'clock out here on the West Coast and roll right into, go to sleep, get up in the morning, watch the Masters, hopefully the end of the Masters, and then the NASCAR race. It's going to be a hell of a Saturday, Sunday.
Wait, so when is F1?
So they're in Australia. So for us West Coasters, the race will be at 10 o'clock at night on Saturday.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was watching practice of the night. Qualifying's pretty much going on right now. We're recording this late on a Friday night. And then the race will be Saturday because of the time delay and stuff. Obviously,
that'll be perfect for me to roll from the F1 right into some Australian rules football.
Perfect.
All hours of the night.
Who needs to sleep? Nobody does. It's fine. So, but yeah. So qualifying is in the books. Any major takeaways? Anything that you thought, I really want to think about this when I'm making bets? Obviously, we'll get to our betting card and talk about some of the value we found after placing our bets, obviously ahead of qualifying. Any major standouts for you? Anything that you were impressed by, thought of, worried about, anything like that?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost for me has got to be the performance of the RFK cars. My hatred for Brad Keselowski will not cease, but looking at what they did last week at Richmond and now going into Martinsville with both of them qualifying inside the top 10, including my boy Chris Buescher, who I hope you jumped on that top 10 market if you found it anywhere because it's getting really short. But seeing both of those guys qualify inside the top 10 when they really haven't been running very well this year, to me was probably the biggest surprise of qualifying.
Yeah. I think it was interesting, and it was obviously impressive to see them run that well. And it's hard, Brian, because I want to take a balance of okay, these are drivers that have done really well throughout the year that I think with the new cars could do something. But I also want to factor in a little bit of track history, but I really don't want to be too. It's like it's a weird like trying to find that needle, like
Yeah.
right through the just because you don't want to over factor it because obviously different cars, some of the tracks have changed, but you also want to think about drivers that have traditionally done well and kind of how that may translate to going forward. So
Yeah, I also think too, something else that I was really keen on watching was during practice, for instance, guys like Ryan Blaney and I think Kyle Larson, and I think Logano as well. They ran pretty much the entire practice session, so they probably got a little bit of better feeling as to what the tire fall off is or how their car is going to adjust over longer runs. Whereas some of the guys, even the RFK guys, they showed speed for qualifying, but that's only a 2-lap run. Like, are they going to be able to maintain that over over the long haul of the race? So I think that really kind of makes it even more difficult trying to bet, especially these tracks, which are so tricky. And as we saw last tonight in Xfinity, there's going to be a lot of contact.
Yep, and we saw I think the good thing too for like Larson especially is like when you have a team like Hendrick and you have so many cars on the track, you can
Yep.
see how it impacts different cars based on the way they're set up,
Yeah.
make some decisions there, and kind of have an expectation. And it'll be interesting to see, will we get long runs where there's not a lot of cautions and these guys can really get that car going and maybe someone else is a little more impactful? Or do we get a competition caution, get something at the end, and all of a sudden, the fast cars for a lap or two are the ones you want to be excited about because all we need is 2 laps and we got this. So be really interesting. So let me pull up DraftKings here. We can do what we always do. Appreciate everybody who's been enjoying the show, checking it out, hitting the
Yeah.
thumbs
Thank
up,
you.
leaving us a comment. We had somebody who took our lineup from last week, 7x their money. Love to see it. Not promising that each and every week,
No.
but glad you rode the wave with us. I had a very nice week on DraftKings, which I broke down on the previous show, but doubled up, had a nice week. Obviously, the Masters took a lot of my focus this week, but we're here for NASCAR. I'm very excited for that, and we can kind of dive into the pricing and to the opportunities. And with Truex, he's the most expensive driver, but he's also starting 20th. Marty Party looked great a week ago. I expect him to be really, really popular this week. But I think it's worthwhile, especially if you're doing any sort of cash games. Obviously, GPP, if you want to be a little different, fading him could make some sense. But like we said with Bowman, sometimes chalk is good chalk, and you need to be on board with it and find a way. One of your drivers, maybe 2 of your drivers, have a little less ownership, be a little different, maybe leave a little salary on the table. And that's a good way to kind of attack GPPs, even with really popular plays. And they're good plays for a reason. So Truex at 11.5 is absolutely worth your time. Beyond him, Elliott 11.2 starting on the pole. Our guy Ryan Blaney starting 12, number 12, 10.9. Kyle Larson starting into the top 10 at 10.6. Hamlin, last week's winner, 10.3. And then Kyle Busch at a flat 10K. What are your thoughts kind of on this range? And, who are you finding yourself gravitating towards?
I mean, like you said, it's kind of hard to not want to put Martin Truex Jr. in your lineup just with his
Mm-hmm.
past success. I mean, winning 3 of the last 5 races here. But for me, looking at the Gibbs cars in particular, I would much rather go to Denny Hamlin at
Yeah.
$1,200 cheaper, starting 5 positions worse, knowing that he's also ran pretty good here, over his career. He doesn't have the outright success that Truex does, but finishing inside the top 10 and getting inside the top 5s is more than enough to justify paying, 10,300 for somebody starting 25th.
Yeah. Yeah. And is compelling. What I will say is his last few runs at this track have not been wonderful. Started 12th, finished 24th, started 4th, finished 11th, started 2nd, finished 3rd, started 3rd, finished 24th. So, hasn't been the most consistent at this track. Obviously, will be really compelling. I'm wondering if people see, especially with Hamlin getting the win last week, see that 10-3 versus the 11-5, and actually he ends up
That's a
getting a
good
little
point.
more ownership than Truex. I'd be curious to see when some of the ownership projections and stuff come out, what people want to do. But yeah, Hamlin traditionally runs really solid over his last 3 top fives, obviously starting second, finishing third. I don't know how great I feel about it, but I guess at the end of the day, finishing the top five, starting 25th. I expect him to move up, fight for a top 10, probably a top 5 position. So he's going to be somebody. And, if you start your lineups, Truex, Hamlin, I think there's ways to make that work. And you're going to feel really, really good about it.
The only thing I would worry about, if you were to start with both of those two guys, I almost feel like you're punting on the early dominator of the race, because it's going to be, it's going to be closer towards the end of the first stage that either of those two guys have even moved in, inside that top 5 market.
But as we drop, there's options, there's opportunity.
True.
We can start in the 9K range. Obviously, Logano 14th. Your boy Willie Byron, winner of the truck race, starting 5th. He could get out to the front pretty easily. 95. You could see a world where that works. Alex Bowman, Christopher Bell qualified strong again, looking good in that top 10. We'll see if he can actually
maintain that
make
spot.
bring the car all the way to the end of the track. But we'll see. Chastain starting 27th at 8,800, I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, it's been a great start to the season for him, looking like a real strong contender. Obviously, both of us holding outright tickets are very optimistic that we can make that happen. Tyler Reddick started 22nd. Kevin Harvick looked good last week, almost had the win.
Great again.
Starting 6th, 8,400 could be an interesting way to potentially go with a dominator if you want to spend up at with Hamlin and or Truex, and then Briscoe, and then Kurt Busch. So of that, like, kind of, I guess, high 9s to 8K range, what names jump out to you specifically?
I mean, if I was looking at kind of a cheaper dominator option, I would definitely lean towards William Byron. I mean, he's second overall in driver rating on the season. He's just been fast. He's been probably the most consistently fast Hendrick car on the year, qualified 5th. He's looked great. He has a fellow Hendrick car, Chase Elliott, on the pole. So that these guys are probably sharing, setups and all this kind of stuff, what was working, what wasn't. So, I mean, like, if you don't go with an Elliott for your immediate dominator, you definitely have to get some exposure to one of those Hendrick cars, I think. And I think the play would be William Byron, because he's only 9,500.
That could make some sense. I think going to Bowman too, and then using Harvick could make a little bit of sense. Because I'm with you. You need some Harvick. You need some Hendrick cars this week for sure.
I was just going to say, I actually really like Bowman just because 15th starting position. I mentioned it earlier with the race preview show. I have an outright on him. It'll be interesting to see what the odds are now that qualifying's done. But he ran really fast in practice.
Yeah, and obviously last year at the spring race was awful, but ended up winning the playoff race. So I'm always interested on that too, because I feel like with the difference in temperature and stuff, maybe the car runs a little differently, and if some drivers tend to pop at one and not the other, which I think is really interesting.
Well, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because if everyone was there and if you watch practice or qualifying today, as the sun started to be hidden behind clouds, I guess it increased the traction on the track, and people were going, hundreds of seconds faster because they had more grip. So it'll be really interesting to see tomorrow night when there's no sun. It's going to be cold, they said. So in all likelihood, you're going to see some different times from a lot of these guys.
Yep. So it will be interesting. And honestly, he hasn't ran this. We haven't ran this race at this time of the year since 2019. So it'll be interesting to see. Or I guess we did 21, but then we skipped 20 because of the whole COVID stuff. So so they haven't had a ton of experience this time. as we dip, keep going. If you really want to get wild, Brian, Eric Almirola is 7,500 and starting second. If you want that early dominator, I don't think it's that crazy to lean on him if you're going with, Truex and Hamlin and expecting both of them to be competitive. But as we talked about, obviously in history, people that qualify kind of outside that top 10 don't really have a chance at winning. And like
Yeah.
what I think you were saying, anything outside of 15 hasn't even.
Yeah, I think the worst finishing position was 14th, I believe, or 15th, 14th or 15th in the last, I think I said 15 races. So
No. So it,
there you go.
it's hard to bank on both those guys to fit to win the race, but
Yeah.
it's just hard to get around the track and get in front of people. A few nice pit stops, maybe you get top fives with both those guys and you'd be loving life. But
Well, and I think it's interesting too at a track like this, it kind of removes some of the advantage that the bigger teams may have just in terms of like overall power or speed in their cars, because this is really predicated on the driver's ability to, bleed the brakes into the corner and come off really quickly and get back on the throttle and stuff like that. So short track drivers or like dirt racers, they were saying like they're much better and more suited for these kinds of tracks, especially Martinsville.
Yep, and I'm curious to see the crossover between road courses, obviously with the heavy braking coming around the turns, the short track and the flat track people, and kind of who has the best odds to take advantage of that. Obviously your boy Chris Buescher looked great in qualifying, ended up finishing 4th. He's 7K, that's hard to get to, but
yeah,
if you want to be real crazy, and take him as your dominator, if you're in some GPPs where you want to get real different and then just go chalk the rest of the way, it could be wild. But I think
I would assume he's not going to be very heavily owned starting where he is.
Yeah. Dinger the Ringer, 6,600, starting 36th. Got 3rd tonight. Had a chance to win the race. Obviously, he got 100,000 for where he finished, so that was pretty solid. Obviously good for his team. So tonight was good experience for him on this track and kind of getting a feel for the braking. Obviously the cars can be a little different, but good to get kind of wheels on the track and go around a few times. So he's interesting to me, especially at the price point. I think he could make some moves, but I also could see him being kind of popular, but that's just where my head's going.
I don't know if I could get there with Dinger, just with the potential of like, getting lapped early, or and that's a danger you run into starting near the back of the pack at this track in particular, where passing is so difficult.
Yep.
Just looking at that range right there, I think Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace stand out the most to me, and probably more so Bubba, considering he was extremely fast in practice. And then during qualifying, he had some issues with his braking, locked it up a couple of times. And so, he's looked better.
Yeah. He's just such a like a pedal down driver to me that I don't see him as a guy who can really compete on a shorter track, but maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. Todd Gilliland popped up
dude,
top 10.
That was incredible.
So that's certainly something. Let's have some fun. Let's build a lineup, Brian.
Let's do it.
I will let you take the tee, and I will let you make the first pick. Who do you want to be our first name in this lineup?
Give me last week's champ, Denny Hamlin.
Okay.
10-3, starting 25th.
Okay.
I think he finishes stage 1 inside the top 10. And
okay.
That's kind of an indication of where he's going for the entire race.
Okay. So we're at Martinsville. Do we want to go with the Marty party, or do we want to punt that and see if we can find value without him in our lineup? Because if we're going with Hamlin, I don't know that I want to try and reach for both of those guys.
It's your pick. We're gonna feed off each other's picks here. So you go in the direction that you want. Just knowing that like Truex is probably gonna be, 40-45% minimum. And Hamlin too is probably going to be pretty heavily rostered.
Yep. I'm going to force a little something on you.
Oh, Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I know you don't love
But
it,
he's great here.
but he was strong in qualifying. He was strong in practice. Has had a ton of success over his last. What's he 1, 2, 3? Has finished in the top 5 in all but was it 3, 6 of his last 7. He's finished in the top 5, and I know he's not the same driver he used to be. But he has looked pretty solid the past couple weeks. Starting 9th, I think we can get squeeze another top 5 out of him. Potentially some early dominator points if he can get to the front. At 7,900, I think I'm going to do it and force you to get a little squeamish.
Ugh, yeah, that's gross. I mean, he's been really good here, so I can't fault that. But you already know what's going to wind up happening is during the last stage of the race, him and Hamlin are going to be running probably 5 and 6, and Keselowski's gonna spin out or get a flat and ruin both of their races. Yeah, so I mean, this is going to put us at a little bit of a disadvantage, but it's really hard. I have an outright on him starting 15th. I think he showed the speed as just one of the Hendrick guys, and that's Alex Bowman, 9,300.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit. I don't think he's going to be very popular. I think that'll be a nice way to be a little bit different. Okay, I think that means we need to start looking for some salary savings and find some alternatives that aren't quite as expensive. The question is how gross do we want to get? Like, I don't know that we want to do Almirola. I mean, do we want to do Almirola? He's starting 2nd. Do we want to try and take that risk that he can lead some laps early? Obviously 400 laps, so not 500, but that's still a lot of potential to lead laps. Let's see who else could make sense starting a little bit lower. I mean, Kyle Larson's compelling, but he's going to be expensive. I don't know that we'll have the dollars to get to him.
I mean, I think that Almirola call would make a lot of sense, especially if we're trying to deviate from like the masses in terms
Let's
of
see what we can do with it, because I think he's interesting as a dominator. I think he is really affordable.
And he can stay up there. I mean, say he jumps to the front for the entire first stage and he leads 60 laps. I mean, those are great points, and winds up, even if he finishes 12th, the laps led makes up for all of that.
And I could totally see him finishing like 8th or 9th, be fine. Like, obviously not ideal. He could even finish top 5. So, and then the question is, do we want to find 2 drivers in kind of the high 6, low 7 range? Or do we want to get a little aggressive, maybe find a cheaper option and then go way up and then find us a little better option?
I mean,
let's take a look at what we can do here.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of options this week. I mean, like Daniel Suarez is somebody that's interesting, but even he's 6,800, so you're not really saving much there.
Yeah, Bubba might not be the worst. Started 17th, finished 25th last year, but in the April race started 25th, finished 16th. The one before that started 32nd, finished 21st, started 23rd, finished 11th. Obviously a couple different cars in there. Kurt Busch, I believe, has been pretty solid here. Where is he at? Yeah, there's Kurt Busch. So let's see what Kurt Busch did, because that's the car that Bubba took over, right? Or no, Eric Jones. Why am I thinking Kurt Busch? Brain is not working here on a Friday night, but Mr. Jones and me.
Honestly, of all of those guys that are currently listed, to me, Bubba Wallace has the most speed. And probably is the most aggressive other than Ricky Spinhouse, who is not going to do well at this track.
Okay, well, let's throw him in there. I'll see what happens. He's starting 21st. Let's get a top 15 out of him. Let's have some fast laps, not hate ourselves for using him. And then we can go we can go have some fun. We could do Kevin Harvick, who's another potential lap leader, but with Keselowski, maybe that doesn't make sense. Briscoe, Kurt Busch, Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric. Man, this is a really tough spot. Do we want to?
This is a tough week, man.
Do we want to punt on Keselowski and see?
No way, you added him in there.
Okay. I set myself up, so now I have to deal with it.
That's right. And I mean, quite honestly, when you look at his history at this track for 7,900, starting 9th, with knowing that he's been finishing inside the top 5 every single race here, that's a pretty damn good value when you're looking at DK pricing.
So my two thoughts are either Kurt Busch or Kevin Harvick. Harvick's obviously got a better chance at winning, better chance at leading more laps, but won't really move through the field.
But he's looked great the past few weeks, and I mean last week's second with Hamlin, and just his like knowledge of the way that this track races is something that'll will likely come into play.
Let's do it. Team Olds, baby. We love the old guys. Hamlin, Keselowski, Almirola, Harvick, and then Wallace and Bowman bringing it up. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. It feels a little dirty, but maybe that's just because Keselowski's name in there. And
hey man, sometimes the ones that you're not too sure of are actually the best. The best lineups.
100%. So I will save this lineup. I will enter it in a couple tournaments, and we'll report back next week on how we did. Let's shift our focus, look at the updating betting odds, and see if we can't find some winners. Brian's obviously hit Hamlin on his personal card, and then had the 2 weeks before then 2 winners. Hasn't been a great run of props and stuff, but like I had Dinger at the road course, and that was going to win me all the money until it didn't win me any money. And I had Truex last week, felt great about it until he was getting passed by Harvick and Hamlin. So a little bit of right place, wrong time. I feel like I'm trending in the right direction, just not quite yet. So Chase Elliott is now your big favorite, 4-1, 5-1, which makes sense. Obviously sitting on the pole, has a good track record, good at road courses, a lot of crossover that makes sense for him. Right behind him, Kyle Busch, another driver I kind of liked when we did our initial talk. Kyle Larson, you can always convince me of. I still think he's one of the most dominant drivers, even though we haven't seen the wins start to pile up. But I mean, that could easily start this week. Our guy, Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex, you can get at 10-1, and he's starting farther back than you like, but his success and track record at this course makes him really interesting. And then obviously William Byron right behind him. So of that kind of grouping, do you have anyone standing out, any numbers that really make sense to you?
Well, I'm not touching Elliott at 4-1.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm going all the way down. I would go to Byron at 10-1. Okay. To be honest with you.
So just for everyone who's watching who didn't see the initial show, I have Kyle Larson at 10-1. I have Ross Chastain at 25-1, and I have Kevin Harvick at 22-1 in terms of outrights. And then Brian has Ryan Blaney at 14-1, Chase Elliott at 11-1, which is looking amazing. And Christopher Bell at 14. So, those are the tickets we're currently holding from our Wednesday show, and we're trying to add to that potentially. The only one that really is something that I'm considering is Truex, but based on where he's starting, it's really hard for me, even though those odds have basically doubled since we talked last.
Well, and I think too, of note, if you didn't watch the Xfinity race, the last 30 laps were mired by 7 or 8 cautions, I believe. So if somebody is further back in the field, they can continue to take new tires, and just smash up to the top 10 grid. And then all bets are off at that point when you come down to the end of the race. So this may be kind of one of those outliers where you do see somebody from outside the top, 7 or so rows win this race.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see with the new cars if that makes a little bit of a difference. It'll also be interesting to see if there is kind of like last week where they got stuck in pockets and couldn't get through. But with lap traffic and stuff, they might be able to set drivers up and kind of go around them or use like other lap traffic as a to drift and to draft off of. Logano 12, 14. Denny Hamlin, once again, he's kind of in that Truex bucket where numbers are really interesting, but he's starting so far back. I don't know that I really want to go there. Bowman at 17, especially with 10 and 14, 12 still out there. I do want to double check that that's actually a real number because, Bowman at 17. That's really interesting. Where is he starting? He is starting
15th. So he's like right on the cusp of where we've seen somebody win before, but not
that feels
long.
like a top 3, top 5 bet, not a right.
I was just gonna say his DK top 5 right now is plus 150, which is, that's not exactly the kind of odds you want to get for somebody that's 17, 20 to 1. So
no,
probably an avoid.
Really regretting the Ross Chastain bet because I can get double that number now. So that's fun. So sometimes you get a value like Brian got with Chase Elliott, and sometimes you get a anti-value like I got with Ross Chastain.
Well, it's interesting too because if you watch Chastain during like qualifying, you can tell he was being super aggressive into the corners. Whereas during a race over a 400 lap stretch, he's not going to do that every single lap. So if he can just find a groove, I definitely see a world where he moves in close to the top 10, which is a way better market for him this week than we had been getting. I mean, he's close to even money this week as opposed to 1 to 2, which we've been seeing.
He's finally kind of going to where he needs to be. Getting that 22 on Harvick is nice. I mean, the best number is 20, 15, 16, a lot of places. So I don't hate having that in my back pocket either. Any of these outrights you want to add? Any of the, we can keep going down, but like we talked about kind of on our early look is, really feels like a pound the top of the board or don't bet outrights kind of week.
Yeah, once you get past that first group of people, I really don't think that there's very many other drivers that really legit have a shot here. Even Denny Hamlin starting so far back. I mean, it's going to be a trek to try to get to the top of the
Harvick, especially if you can get the 20, I think is worthwhile. I don't hate Joey Logano at 14.
Yuck.
I know you. I'm going to make you bet him and play Brad Keselowski in DraftKings, and it's going to be hilarious. Byron's decent. Truex, I don't hate anyone that takes that 10 to 1. I won't be taking it. I think that's kind of it. Larson would be like 8 to 1, 7.5 to 1. I'd be fine with. I just think he's that good of a driver, and I expect him to start winning races sooner than later. Let's flip over and look at DraftKings. We can look at some of those placement bets because I think that's where we're going to be a little more excited. Currently holding a Harvick top 5 at plus 250. We'll see what his current number is. I also have Truex top 3 at plus 150. I think I could probably get a better number. And it's 2 to 1. It's really not really that much worse, so that's fine. And then Dinger the Ringer starting 36. I need him to top 10, but I got plus 325. It's probably I could probably get a better number, but I'm not really trying to get to that. So let's see what we can do here. What's going on? Oh, I have to hit this. That's where it is. Okay, so yeah, here's our top 3s, top 5s. If you see a number,
so I jumped on Christopher Bell early in the week, top 5 at plus 175, and that's down to plus 150. So got a little bit of juice there. And then the Kevin Harvick thing, both of us, we got it at plus 250. He's down to plus 180 at the top 5. Like, that's great.
What do we think about Bowman plus 150 to top 5?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that's enough for me to try to get there, because he seems like the kind of guy that either wins the race or finishes outside the top 10. So I don't.
Yep. Got a
I would
lot of
much
Ricky
rather just
Bobby.
go up to an
3-1
outright with
on
him.
Brad K to top 5 is really interesting.
Hell no.
I know you hate him. It's fine. But the fact that you aren't interested makes me even more interested. Because it's the weeks that we're both like kind of in agreement or you're on board is when things go horribly, horribly wrong.
That's very true. I think a Briscoe, like, okay, so Briscoe, Ross Chastain, I think those two are very intriguing. Like, if you want to get a little frisky with your wagering this week,
yeah.
I mean, going with them on a top 5, which is pretty good value at 3-1.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any interest in going up to like a 5-1 on Chris Buescher, or are you happy with your top 10?
No, I'm happy with my 4-1 at top 10. I'm not going deeper with that.
Yeah, I think that's the move. Let's look at top 10 market and see if we can't find some value. Almirola at -140, I think is interesting. Obviously, he could easily finish 12th or something, but starting second, I think there's a good chance that he's able to kind of hold it there most of the day and finish 8th or 9th. Kind of my thesis for DraftKings as well. So I don't love this number, but I think it makes sense. Chastain -110 to top 10. I don't know, man. Kurt Busch at +125. I think I'd rather do that.
I mean, it's also kind of like how confident you are in them finishing where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, Kurt Busch, he's been, like a roller coaster, whereas Ross Chastain of late has been one of the best drivers in the Cup Series.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And
it's almost like, as we've seen so far this year, like even the pole sitter, that has not indicated how well they're going to perform during the race. So taking qualifying for what it is, you kind of have to take a step back and analyze the race by just, taking everything into account: recent performance, recent history at this track, somewhat qualifying, somewhat practice. But anytime you get close to even money, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Bubba +250. No.
Yeah, it's already been added for me, actually.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I will add him as well. +250 to top 10. I think is a number that can make a lot of sense. I could see him squeezing that out. Just throw a unit on there. See what happens.
As long as he doesn't crash.
I'm gonna let your rationale help me out and take the Chastain T10 at -110 for a good number there.
And then too, I also want to hit on the top 10 market. Kyle and I were talking about this prior to the show. I almost feel as if sports books are getting a little bit more educated on the NASCAR market, as top 10 market was not posted at the majority of sports books ahead of qualifying. So they're starting to realize that when they post those big numbers, like the one I got on Buescher at +400, they're going to get had at the market. So I think there's a real chance that we see them hold off on posting any of these until practice or qualifying is concluded going further.
Yeah, let's hop over to FanDuel and see if we can get better numbers. Although, do we have places?
They don't have anything.
Shouts to FanDuel for just not.
I told you, man.
This is what we get for. This is what we get for recording when we. Well, I think NASCAR is so unprioritized, especially with baseball starting, right now. The Masters, basketball, hockey, like. So I think we'll do some shopping tomorrow morning before, see if we can't get better numbers on some of this stuff, and we'll try and tweet out some thoughts in the morning if we find better numbers. Obviously, the race isn't till tonight if you're watching this, so there is time to kind of finagle the markets and look for value and all that good stuff.
I found 2 driver matchups over at BetMGM. I'm going to be adding. One is Christopher Bell over Joey Logano at -105.
Show bet.
Oh. Oh, so we're going to have 2 show bets this week.
Oh, we already have one. That's right. Yeah, let's do it. 2
Let's
show
do it.
bets.
All right.
I just
Okay, so
think it's
Bell
interesting.
over, who did I say, Logano?
Bell over Logano, yeah.
All right, so I'll just put that as 2 units for me.
Okay.
I'll lay the minus 105, and then
This seems crazy to me. I know. I'll let
I
you
know.
go ahead and finish your point,
It's
but like,
because of their starting position. But real quick, and then the other one I saw that I will be placing is although the juice is a little bit shorter than I like it to be on a matchup, Chris Buescher over Cole Custer at minus 115.
yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it's good. I think that's a good. I'm actually gonna do that. Busher over Custer, both starting near the front, which is kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
but just I have much more faith in Buescher
Oh,
to.
Hundo P. Hundo P. This is interesting. Larson minus 125 over Hamlin. I know it's based on starting, but geez. Logano over Hamlin. I think that's a good bet. Where's Logano starting? Isn't he starting like top 10?
14th.
14. Yeah,
He's gonna crash out. He's gonna crash.
I'm taking Logano over Hamlin.
Man,
Probably stupid.
I'm getting very invested in these driver matchups this week, but
I just see good numbers based on where they're starting. Plus, I got to make up some ground on these stupid bets that I've been making. But the best way to make that is to lose money. Keselowski over Briscoe, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that Keselowski over Briscoe one, I already have that on my card.
No.
You know my hatred for.
No, I appreciate your hatred and your consistency. It's very warranted, and I love it.
Oh my lord! Okay, so I just saw on our favorite offshore that Kyle and I like to wager at. Total cautions for this race are set at 15.5.
What's the juice?
Minus 125 to the over.
What's the under? Plus
Minus 105. I would be willing to lay a little bit on the under just because I don't think they're going to be as crazy as Xfinity, but at the same time, I mean, with the new cars, they spin easy. So
yeah. That's interesting. Plus, the other thing is because the track's so much shorter, it's not as easy for cars to kind of get out of the way. So it's a lot easier for bigger wrecks to happen, or just to kind of be more obnoxious. That's a
if
good
you
number.
saw the Xfinity race, they literally blocked the entire track
Yeah.
with the last wreck.
Yeah, the under is interesting to me just because I like unders and I like juice. But man, that's interesting.
Okay, real quick before we decide to get out of here.
Sure.
Our offshore also has a driver matchup of Chase Elliott versus Denny Hamlin. The juice on Hamlin is plus 220.
Woo! That sounds like a matchup they had up before qualifying and now are trying to adjust it at post qualifying.
I'm betting it. I don't care. That's just too good odds on a driver matchup, regardless of their starting position.
Especially with drivers, their ability to crash out. And
I was just gonna say, what if Chase Elliott gets a flat early in the race? He has a car blowout or a tire blowout, spins up to the wall, and absolutely destroys his rear
plus
fender.
220.
He's effed.
Plus 220.
Plus 220.
Okay, I added it too.
That's ridiculous.
Let's ride. It's just the way cars can just be out of the race. It's hard for me to see a prop or a head-to-head or something like that and just not hammer that juice. So I will take it.
That's just way too much.
Hundo P, sir. All right, let's throw up our card. We can do a little review, hit a best bet, and get out of here. So, as I mentioned, I have Larson, I have Chastain, I have Harvick. Larson 10-1 at a full unit, Chastain and Harvick at half a unit, 25 and 22 respectively. Also got Harvick for a top 5 at plus 250. I have Larson over Kyle Busch at minus 115. I have Chastain over Ryan Blaney, plus 120. We have a show bet from Wednesday. I'm taking Truex Brian's taking Blaney. We do even money on those. Truex top 3 is my best bet from Wednesday. The juice at that time was plus 150. It's 200 now. I still think it's an interesting bet. He's just so dominant at this track. AJ Allmendinger top 10 plus 325 from last week. Added this week. Bubba Wallace top 10 plus 250. Chastain top 10 minus 110. Chris Buescher over Cole Custer, Joey Logano over Denny Hamlin, and Hamlin over Elliott. So I need Logano in front of Hamlin, who's also in front of Elliott. Then I can win all the money. Brian has Bowman, Bell, Byron for his outrights. He has a Bell top 5, a Harvick top 5, a Christopher Buescher top 10 at 4-1, which is a smoking bet from last week. And Brian, I will allow you to make that your best bet, although we probably should get a current number just because then people can jump off.
Yeah, don't worry.
Bubba top 10, Byron over Truex, Briscoe over Keselowski, Blaney over Truex, Bell over Logano, Buescher over Custer, and Hamlin over Elliott. Brian Twining, what is your best bet for the Blue-Emu 400 at Richmond?
So just for the show purposes, I am going to take the updated odds, and I'm going to go with a Chris Buescher top 10 at 2-1 for the Blue-Emu 400.
Love it.
I really hope you got a better number earlier in the week. I just think that his recent history at this track shows that he's run near that spot, and all it's going to take is just pure luck for him to move up 1 or 2 spots, and maybe like Austin Dillon last week, finish 10th on the last lap.
Yep. Appreciate anybody who's made it this far. Make sure you smash that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already done so. We are here twice a week for your betting, for your DFS, and all things NASCAR. Obviously, we'll be back for football season too. Have a lot of fun. My best bet for the Blue-Emu 400 is obviously from last show. It's Truex top 3. I still like that. Don't love that. It took a little convincing, but I'm going to make it my best bet anyways. Ross Chastain top 10. I just think it's a good number. I think he can do it. And I just think he's that good of a driver. I expect him to perform well. So actually, let me look at one thing.
So I wanted to hit on Chastain. So 2 races ago at Eco Park, we got him at minus 135, and we were excited about that for a top 10. So that just shows you, like, even if you can get him anywhere near even money, like that's great value right now for how good he's been driving.
Yeah. Larson top 3, top 5, but I don't want to take that minus money. I'm going to look at what FanDuel posts tomorrow.
If they do it.
I might. Yeah, they will. It's just a matter. They just haven't gotten around to hitting it yet, but I will be taking it. Oh, I do want to mention, we'll look at the F1 market really quick. We're in Australia this week. I haven't looked at qualifying yet, so kind of doing this blind. It's interesting to see Lewis up here now at 11. Couple weeks, maybe
Mercedes is not fast.
The break helped Mercedes. I just, at the end of it, like Lewis Hamilton to win the this is to win the championship. That's what it is. 11-1. I don't think it's crazy. I think by the time we're all said and done, he will be right in the conversation. Similar with Mercedes, but man, they do have some ground to make up. Obviously, the odds aren't up yet. So if I see a decent line, I
have updated. So practice 1, the Ferraris were 1 and 2, and then both Red Bulls 3 and 4. Lando Norris actually 5th. Mercedes was 7th. Lewis Hamilton, so not good. Let's see. Practice 2, Charles Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and Alpine. Let's see. Lewis Hamilton all the way down at 13th.
Lando Norris, McLaren's finally showing up. Hopefully,
Lando Norris top speed in the 3rd practice.
Yeah, and Danny Rick is 6th after looking like a freaking circus car on the First
I really
couple
wish
races.
this was how they were in race 1 when I bet a bunch of money on Lando Norris, the top 10.
Yeah, I had a nice race 1. I had a terrible race 2. So it's been a mixed bag for me over there, but we'll see if we can find some winners. I will tweet that out tomorrow once I know post qualifying, once I see the odds too. So at Notorious KRO, follow us at Greasy Rules 14, at FPAOP, at AOP Podcast on Instagram. We're doing everything. We're sharing it all around. Please share the show. Please like, subscribe, do all the things. We really, really appreciate everybody's hopping on board. We're marching towards 500 subs. If we can get to 500 subs by the, by the end, by summer, maybe we can find some way to do a giveaway. If we can get to 1,000 by the end of the season, we'll definitely do a giveaway. So like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll make it worth your while. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Appreciate anybody who's made it this far, and enjoy the race, and we'll talk to you next week.